Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. If you desire to intimately connect with yourself, significant other, children, family, friends, community, and higher power, then this is the show for you. We explore intimate topics, inspiring life stories, spirituality, and insightful tips on strengthening relationships. The show is hosted by Dr. April and her co-host, Coach K. Let's get this episode of the Bringing Intimacy Back show started. We share with you today the secret power to intimacy to create the life you love or love the life you create. Now here's your host, Dr. April, and her co-host, Coach K.
Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. How are you doing, Coach K?
I am doing just fine. How about yourself?
Good. I'm so excited. It's the month of August.
Yes, August, it actually just like snuck up really quickly.
Yes. And I guess I'm excited because it's a little bit of a transitional month in the sense of these last few weeks of summer. And for all our listeners who are out there, getting ready for the school year and the year to begin and stuff. So
That is true. That is you complain about the heat, and then when it goes away, it's like, no.
Yeah, here in Florida, we have heat for a while. Yes, yeah. But
That's true.
Yes. But it is a great month just because it's one of those months that, number one, it begins with A, which I like things that begin with. Yes. And like it said, it's a transitional month, but it's also a month of being able to focus on difficult things. It's a month that deals with a month of resiliency. And so it's the month of resiliency, of how to bounce back.
I never thought of it that way. Yeah,
which I'm so excited. One reason why I'm excited is I'm going to talk later on about a charity that helps with that, but also for today's topic of a heterosexual relationship as an intersex trans man with Dr. Lino. And I'm excited to have Dr. Lino Martinez on because Dr. Lino, I was on his show, but he has gone through a lot himself, and being able to be resilient. Because, sometimes many people, when something happens, they get so distraught, they put their covers over their head and they get stuck, is what I call it.
Yeah, bury their heads in the sand and it's woe is me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they can't see anything else. So one of the things I'm so happy about this charity of the month that we are highlighting, it's called WW Better Tomorrow. Yeah, if you're out there listening and you feel stuck, there's always tomorrow. There's always tomorrow.
That's an important thing to it sounds so simple, but it's something important that sometimes you may need to say out loud to remind somebody that may be next to you that is just thinking whatever is happening right now is just the end of the world. And here's the thing, if it's the end of the world tomorrow, live today.
Exactly.
Live in the fullest for today. So
Yes. So the charity is called Better Tomorrows with an S at the end, .org. And it's a charity, a nonprofit that helps focus on strengthening residents or people who have to overcome adversity. So they have creative programs to help you and your family or your generation if you feel stuck.
That sounds like a really, really good, just the name alone is awesome. So I can imagine the foundation is just as great.
Yes, definitely. So going back to our show today, we have Dr. Lino Martinez. Yes.
I'm excited.
Yes. I was on his show. And one of the things I liked about his show, he has a podcast called A Little Less Fear. So he is going to talk about how I think each of us have fears.
Yeah.
Each of us, yeah. But how not to get stuck. How not,
Important.
yeah. How not to, how to be resilient, to push past that.
I cannot wait to hear from Dr. Martinez. Honestly, just a little bit of time that I've known, it's like very great, just high energy radiating person that has a story that we all could use and hear.
Yes, definitely. So, growing up, he had a very rare genetic disease, and so because of that, he pushed forward and he
Mhm.
made a variety of different changes. Won't give away his story, so we'll take a break and we'll be back.
Are you wanting a vacation in paradise? Vacation to reignite the passion, the desire in your relationship? Vacation counseling is just for you. We are deeply committed to your success as a couple. Our couples counseling retreats are exclusive, effective, and intimate. At Vacation Counseling, you will benefit from a combination of couples counseling, intimacy counseling, and individual counseling while you and your partner enjoy a relaxing vacation in sunny Southwest Florida. If you are interested in vacation counseling, please visit us at vacationcounseling.com for more information on prices and packages.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy show, where intimacy is real. Welcome, Dr. Lino
Thank
Martinez.
you. Thanks so much. It's an honor being here. It's really a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you on the show. One of the things that we ask all our guests is, how do you, because this show's about bringing intimacy back.
Right. I love it.
Yes, which I love the topic, of course, of the title.
Yeah.
Yes. How do you define intimacy and how has that impacted your life?
So you're asking me at a time in my life right now where I've gone through a multitude of things to bring me into the most deepest part of who I've become. And when I first think of the word intimacy, I think of self-love. And
Mhm.
I'm very intimate with myself. I meditate a lot. I take salt baths with crystals. I take long walks. I pray. I talk to my higher self. I'm truly intimate with myself. So when I hear intimacy, the first thing is self love,
Yes.
and that's my first feeling about it.
Okay, awesome. I love that. And it's true, it's about that self. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And as you were in your history, you started off with some struggles growing up.
Oh, yes, I did. I sure did. Yeah, I was born with a rare genetic disease called Muckle-Wells syndrome that's statistically 1 in a million. And basically, it took 36 years for the doctors to diagnose me. And by the time I was diagnosed, I had undergone over 40 surgeries to save my life, and 10 years, in just 10 years. And yeah, it's been an outrageous life. And so, but it all really began. I was a preemie. I was born a preemie, and with the cord wrapped around my neck. I used to joke around and say, "Well, the cord was wrapped around my neck because I was trying to commit suicide. I knew I was gonna have a hard life. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do this. I make up my mind now. I'm not gonna do this." But here I am, and I was a tiny little baby, and the disease just took off from that time on. I started having issues from the time I was 6 months old, and a lot of spasms in my body. I didn't get to thrive. I was very tiny, and but mentally, I did very well, and I did academically. I was always a straight A student. I mean, other ways, I kind of compensated for the struggles that my immune system was going through.
Mm.
That is, it seems like people who are kind of born into the world fighting are some of the stronger and better thriving. It's almost like I had to deal with all of this as this little person, so I'm going to live life to the fullest when I'm able to make decisions.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I've done. That's exactly what I've done. It's so true.
Yeah. And so growing up, how did you start to overcome and find who Lino is, who Dr. Lino is? How did you?
That's a really it's a multi-layered, multifaceted question, and it can go in many different directions. So I was born a female, and I didn't transition into who I am today until I was 34 years old, and I'm 43 now.
Oh, wow.
So I was actually born intersex, but at the time, I just had a big clitoris, and the clitoris didn't really form into a more bigger looking organ until I was in my teens, till I started going through puberty. And the interesting thing is that I remember as a teenager, where there was, I mean, I was forced into. So check it out. I considered myself a lesbian when I was a girl. I know it's funny to say that because yeah, I'm a man now and I have a beard, and some people get taken aback. I've even I've even had lesbians get mad at me when I say, "Hey, I used to be a lesbian," and they're like, "What?" They think I'm joking. I'm like, "No, no, 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 seriously." I was. And so at the time when I would identify as a lesbian, it would really upset my family and my friends. And they would say, "Well, how do you know you're a lesbian if you haven't been with a guy?" And I would often get that all the time. My parents even pushed me to see a psychiatrist to make me straight back in the day.
Mhm.
And I was a little too smart for them at 14. And when I remember when I saw a psychiatrist and he was like, "Well, why don't you like guys?" I was like, "You know what? I do now after seeing you. Thank you, doctor." So I was, yeah, I was,
Raised by Hispanic parents, I'm assuming from the Hispanic.
yes, I was raised by Hispanic Catholic parents, very,
Okay.
Oh,
very Catholic.
Yes.
And so finally, I mean, after so many people pushing me to be with the guy, be with the guy, be with the guy, I was like, you know what? I might as well be with the guy. Everyone's telling me to. So I remember showing my parts to a guy for the first time, and he was like, "Hey, that doesn't look like the girls I've seen." And I said, "Well, then don't effing look at it." I remember getting upset. Well, then don't effing look at me, like, and
I'm
so
not forcing you.
yeah, exactly. And so I really didn't know what was going on at the time. I knew that I felt like a boy from the time I was a little kid. I mean, as young as 3 or 4. And I grew up with a brother that's 4 years older than me. And so I would often sneak in his closet as a kid, as a little kid. I would sneak in there and put on his clothes, take off my dresses, put my hair in a ponytail and wear a baseball hat. And my mom would come in and be like, "What are you doing?" And like take the hat off me and put dresses and bows on me. And I was like, whoa, it was very scary for me. Like having to have my clothes ripped off and get back into girl clothes. It was very abrasive and very it crossed a lot of boundaries. And
Mhm.
so but it also traumatized me. So I also knew that in front of my family I couldn't dress like a boy at all. And so if anything, when I would dress like a female, that's when my father and my mother were very, very loving towards me. It was like, "Oh, look how beautiful you! Oh, we love you, so beautiful! Oh, you're our daughter." But I I hated it. And anytime they would leave the house, they'd go to a family party, I would just go back into my brother's closet and put on his clothes. And like, here we go. This is me now. I'm cool. So but it actually it stayed with me for a very long time, up until my late 20s, actually, where I had a closet, and in my closet I had my boy clothes and one side, and the other side was to appease my family clothes. So when I was behind doors, I'd be in baseball hats, and people would just think I was like this. What would they call me? What are the terms that they use? Well, like a
Like
butch
tomboy or
girl,
something.
tomboy, yeah, butch, lesbian, or whatever, one of those words. And whatever they call whatever term they used, I knew that I felt like a man inside, and I felt more comfortable dressing that way. So, but the real turning point happened as far as the and I'm gonna go into the health part in a minute, but as far as the me realizing that I wanted to identify more as a man, was I was in a relationship with a female, lesbian relationship, when I was 21. And I remember I went to it was actually her birthday party, and there were lesbians all around, and there was like the lipstick lesbians, and I'm so sorry if I offend anybody with these terms, but this is back in 20 years. I'm 43 now. We're looking at 20 years ago. These terms were common, and they weren't offended by it. They were okay being called these. There were lipstick lesbians, and there was the more masculine ones. There was the artsy lesbian. There's just an array of lesbians. And I remember looking at their roles. I was like, "Oh wow, he's like the man and she's like the woman." I was like, "Oh, I wonder." So I went up to the one that looked more masculine and presented herself more masculine, and I'm assuming she was a she, called herself she, because back then there was no people didn't they them binary. That wasn't an option back then. So I remember I went up to one of them, and I asked her, "Hey, do you ever feel like a man when you're with your girlfriend?" And she's like, "No, I'm a lesbian." And she said it very defensive and very matter of fact. And I remember going like, "Whoa, okay, no problem, thanks." And so then I went on to the next the next couple, and I was trying to figure things out. I was 21.
Right.
To the next couple, and I asked the masculine woman the same thing. I was like, "Hey, do you ever feel like a dude?" Like, she was like, "No, I'm a lesbian and I'm proud of it." And I
Right.
said, "Okay, great." And then I just realized, then I was like, I feel like a man. I don't feel like these women here. Something's different.
Right.
And so that night I told my girlfriend, I said, "Hey," I was like, I think I'm a man. I think my brain is a man's brain. Because I just asked them if they feel like that, and they said no. And but when you and when there's no mirrors and we're being intimate and we're loving doving, I feel like a man, a dude. Like, and I feel comfortable like this. And she was so cool. She was like, "Really? Do you want to explore that?" I was like, "Yeah." She was, "Let's dress you up." And so she told her mom, who's a photographer, and her mom put me in a tuxedo, and like it was really fun. Yeah, like it was taking
Nice.
pictures. So I
Nice.
got to explore that masculine side of me and really see that, yeah, that this feels true to me. But I actually didn't transition until I was 34 because it wasn't people didn't transition back then. And it
Right.
was really Caitlyn Jenner that opened the. I mean, even though there's a lot of there's a lot of controversy with Caitlyn Jenner,
Right.
but it really was Caitlyn Jenner that was like, "Oh my, in her 60s she's doing this."
Yeah.
And when she did that, and I was in my 30s dying in a hospital, I said, "Look, if Caitlyn Jenner can do this in her 60s, and here I am dying, I in my 30s, I can do this now." And so I
Wow.
chose life. And when I chose life, when I was in the hospitals, I just decided to not tell anybody and just go straight into it. And I found the right doctors. I got on hormone replacement therapy, and I said, if I'm gonna die, it's gonna be in the right body, not in this female body that I don't feel like.
Wow. So you were also in the hospital because of your illnesses and
For 10 years of my life.
years. Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
so you're already dealing with surgeries and you're like, well, let's add another surgery on.
You
Yeah.
got that right. And that was another reason, because by then I had already had over 25 surgeries. And so I thought, well, what does it take to become a man? A mastectomy? Let's do it. Piece of cake. A what? Hysterectomy? Let's do it. Piece of cake. And I'm going to say, yes, this could be triggering for some people where it's not a piece of cake for some women to have a hysterectomy. It's not a piece of cake for some people that have a mastectomy. But this is my true story right here. This is what
Right.
was true for me. The biggest surgery I had was having my urinary bladder removed. And that was after 15 surgeries of fixing it, 5 years of healing, reconstructive surgery, and to this day, I've never met anyone that's had their urinary bladder removed because my bladder muscles, the whole pelvic area, became paralyzed. So
Mm,
after having such an intense surgery and having intestinal surgery and having a feeding tube, having my appendix used as a stoma, and now I catheterized, I even had my urethra removed. I've never met anyone that's had their urethra removed. After having all of that, and plus there's a lot of other surgeries that I've had, I said, I can have my breast removed in a hysterectomy, no problem. And sure enough, it was no problem. I mean, it took 5 years to heal from having my bladder removed, and my having my breast removed took maybe 3 months. My
Yeah.
hysterectomy within 6 weeks. It really was life saving, though. Either way, it was life saving because I had a new rebirth, and I became more confident and more comfortable with myself. And that's how I started to discover self intimacy. And self intimacy is doing things for myself,
right.
loving myself. And no matter how painful it was going to be physically, emotionally, and mentally and spiritually, I knew that I had to go through it and I had to plow through it to survive and to strive and to thrive.
Wow. Did that also impact your illness and making you feel better now that you're your authentic self?
I would say that is a true statement, and it is because a lot of it's a mental health as well. And so now that I was able to live more authentically and be who I felt I always was, it definitely opens up the door to healing. And everything is in response to how you feel. Every cell in your body is going to respond to how you feel. So if you
Mhm.
start to feel better and you start to identify with who you are on the outside, everything else on the inside is going to start to heal as well.
That is true. That is true. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Let me just say that. I know that's not the whole story, but before I forget,
I know there's so much more.
I genuinely can appreciate the journey and you talking about it because there's someone listening who may be kind of stuck in a place and they don't know that it's okay to genuinely be yourself. You know what you are. All your insides is telling you this thing. And that
Sure.
you also came out of being taught conditional love. Because
Right.
growing up, it sounds like you were taught conditional love. I love you as long as you are the daughter that
Yes.
I see or I want it. So to be able to come out of that and intimately love yourself unconditionally,
Right.
that's a huge feat.
I appreciate that, Coach K. Thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Yeah. And then I was also thinking about, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps Score. but
Yes.
how the body tells you. And sometimes we don't really listen to our body.
We don't listen to our body, and a lot of it, you can even ask your body if you don't even know where your pain is or where you're struggling. You can say, where am I uncomfortable in my body? And if you sit in silence and ask that, you'll, for example, actually had this happen last night. It's been a while. I started to feel this pressure in my chest. I'm like, why am I feeling it? I don't really have anxiety. It feels tight. I don't have asthma. What's going on? Let's sit down in quiet time. So I sit down in a quiet space, and then the words that came to me was just breathe. I'm like, okay. Took 4 breaths and it was gone. And so then I realized, okay, so then you just have to ask, where is this coming from? What do I need to do? And your body's going to tell you. And sometimes it comes in one single word: breathe, relax. And if usually when it's a matter of fact word, you know that that's the truth.
Yes. Yes. So now that you're Dr. Lino, and in this, topic, we're talking about relationships.
Hmm.
Yeah. Which for some people, it's like I found myself. How do I even go into the dating scene?
Such a good question. So I was single for 8.5 years. Will you believe that? I know, 8.5 years is a very long time. And when I met my last girlfriend, her jaw dropped when I told her, "Yeah, I've been single 8.5 years." And she was like, "Huh?" I know it's a long time, but when you're living in hospitals, and then when you transition at 34 years old, and then I lost my voice for 2.5 years from the disease, it paralyzed my vocal cords. So I had to
Oh
learn sign
wow.
language. So that's all that happened. And those were all the reasons why I was single. Yes, I transitioned. That means that I had to go through a puberty at 34. Puberty doesn't, you're not a man overnight. You have to grow facial hair. You get chest hair. Your voice starts to crack. I mean, I'm not going to date anyone at that time. I mean, and actually the women I was attracting were like in their teens. Oh, he's cute. I'm like, no, no, I'm 30. I'm in my 30s. And I'm a doctor. I'm a psychologist. No, so I couldn't go there. And so it was really challenging. The first three, actually, it was about the first 4 years that I'll say that I was going through this puberty. And I didn't even feel comfortable calling myself Dr. Lino, because people would look at me like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. You are. I could hear your voice cracking, boy. So it was like, I can't even say that. I couldn't even be my educated self. So there was a lot of insecurities at that moment. And then there's a lot of grief, Dr. April and Coach K, that I went through. And a lot of the grief that I started to go through was, well, must be nice that these kids can transition nowadays at 18, 19. I had to do it at 34. There was a lot of pain, a lot of jealousy, a lot of grief,
Mhm.
and then I started realizing I didn't get to be a boy falling down, scratching my knees. I didn't get to be a baby boy, a young boy, a boy in my teens. I didn't get to be a boy in my 20s. I didn't even get to be a boy in my early 30s. Now I'm in my mid 30s and I'm a man all of a sudden. Like, hold up. No, I'm not. It takes a lifetime to be a man. I didn't even go to school. I became a doctor when I was 30 years old. I was a female back then. I don't even know what it's like to go to school as a boy. And so I had all these insecurities. And when I had to I had to get over the grief. I had to go over the grief. I've had my psychotherapist since 2007 for almost 20 years. I did a lot of therapy, a lot of shadow work. I became very spiritual. I meditated a lot. I was praying a lot. So it was a lot of self-reflection. And so it took 8.5 years before I was actually ready. And by the time I was ready, I said, you know what? I've done the work. I figured out who I am now. I love myself. My voice is back. The disease is on remission, and now I'm ready for love, and I'm open. I'm ready to open myself up. And when I became open, within a year is when I met her. So it took about a year of me saying I'm open for it to make its way to me.
Hmm.
Well, good for you for waiting it out too and taking the
Yeah.
time to
Oh, it
build
was
you.
tough. I mean, especially going through puberty. I mean, boys. I mean, our hormones are raging. So it was, it was, and it was tough. At least teenage boys, they probably can mess around with other girls their age. I was just by myself. I
Yeah, I
had
was
a lot of maturing that I had to do.
yeah, I was thinking the toughest part would be not having your voice,
Yeah.
not
It
being
was
able
so
to.
tough, Dr. April. Dr. April, I not talking for 2.5 years was one of the biggest. I learned so many lessons at that time because I wear hearing aids too. So I actually became very depressed. I was 30. It was from 38 to 40. So I've only had my voice back for 3 years. And from 38 to 40 and a half is when I lived my life in silence. And at that time, I was going to science school to learn. I went to science school for 2.5 years. I thought I'm not going to stop communicating. I have if I'm never gonna talk again, I mean, at least I'm gonna learn a different way to talk. So I went to science school and I continued the journey, but it was really that time where I got depressed. I said, I went to all this schooling and I have this student loans up my, what, for what, now I can't speak. How am I going to talk to people? I'm losing my hearing. How am I going to hear them? What am I going to do with my life? But when I became spiritual and I started to meet God and I started to meet my inner God, and God's within me as well, and
Yes.
started to see the light all around me, I met the right doctors. I got on the right immunosuppressants. The doors started opening for me. And then here I am thriving for the first time. And actually, the best news I can tell you is that I did my last immunosuppressant injection yesterday, and my doctor says that I will officially be on remission. I don't need to inject unless I have another flare up. Yeah, I know. It's
Yes.
amazing.
Congratulations.
I know. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So now you've got this wonderful, powerful voice, and you've got to let it out so the whole world can hear it. It's a
Oh, I
blessing.
do, and I sing too. I sing a lot. I'm on TikTok. I post myself singing because it's quite a blessing. But a lot of the things that we go through in life, and this goes to anybody that's listening. A lot of the suffering that we go through, I feel, is to also understand humanity in general. One thing that happened recently, my brother had cancer in his throat, and he ended up having his complete voice box removed. I mean, is it just a coincidence that I didn't speak for 2.5 years, and now my brother will never speak? I don't think so. I don't think that we're put into this path with specific things that we go through to not understand things. And in my understanding, I went through this to not only understand my brother, but to understand myself and to understand the beauty in the deaf community and to understand a new language. Like
Yeah.
so much
And
beauty
the
came
sign
from me
language.
losing my voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty great, pretty wild. Sometimes it's just wild.
Yes, yes. And even just that meditation, even the form of just Buddhism, of just really sitting there, and it's what the nothingness, just dealing with the basics.
Yes, the nothingness, and also that's the allness, the oneness.
Yes.
Nothingness is oneness.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow. Well, you're so inspiring.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
if people are out there listening and they're like, they have questions and they want to connect with you, yeah, tell us a little bit about the services you provide in your book.
Yeah, so my book, it's called A Little Less Fear, the same title as my podcast, A Little Less Fear. And you can get a copy of that on Amazon. You can also get it on Amazon Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. If you need to get a hold of me, you can do so by emailing me at a little less fear at gmail.com. And also my website at a little less www.alittlelessfear.com. Did I already say that?
Yes.
There's too much a little less fear going on, but at least there's less fear.
Yes, yes, yes. And do you provide services also?
Well, right now I'm teaching. I'm a professor of psychology, teaching psychodynamic theory. So I'm not providing any specific services, but I'm always open for people who would like to share their personal growth story and motivational journey on my podcast.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lino, for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. This has been an honor.
Yeah,
Thank
this is
you.
great.
Yeah, thank you. We'll
Thank
be back
you.
in a moment. Bye.
Life can be overwhelming sometimes. We think we are a burden to others. We think that it's better to hide it and suppress our hurt, but it's not. As Cave Coral Therapists, we will provide you with quality, confidential counseling services in a relaxing and peaceful environment. Talk to a professional today. Book an appointment on www.cavecoraltherapist.com or call 239-565-6921.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy Show, where intimacy is real. That was so inspiring and touching.
Oh yeah. Like literally the title, Bringing Intimacy Back, is exactly what he did to himself. Like
Exactly.
that was beautiful. Yeah, I love everything about the story, the journey, the openness, the high energy. It's someone needed this to happen today.
Mm-hmm. Right, to realize that there is hope, and how you connect to yourself, your body, and your inner spirit, and your higher power, how it
Yeah.
can produce miracles.
Absolutely. And just don't get trapped inside of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also how to cope with, I think some people come in this world and think that you're not going to suffer. And I'm one that believes that things are going to happen. Yeah.
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 That's the learning lessons. And he
Yes.
definitely did not let life happen to him. He is living life.
Yes, exactly.
So that was awesome. And of course, we have some amazing, even more shows that are coming up in the coming weeks. In this beautiful month of August, you have quizzes. You want
Oh,
to tell us
yes.
about that before I go into this?
Okay. Yes, I do. So if you're out there listening and kind of, I always ask people what their definition of intimacy is, and you're hearing this when you're like, I don't know if I'm truly intimate. Well, definitely go onto our website and you'll find quizzes. There's that self-intimacy, which is being intimate with yourself, knowing yourself. And there's also the partner intimacy. Check it out. And we also send you some resources.
Awesome. Y'all heard it here. So we have some great shows that'll be coming up in this beautiful month of April. So on August, you are Dr. April. We're in August. I'm going to get it together. So August the 10th, we have Can You Date Someone with Different Religious Beliefs? And that'll be Dr. April and myself. And then on August 17th, How Food Fuels Intimacy. That's going to be a really good one. And that'll be with Dr. April and myself as well. On August the 24th, we have Building Intentional Joy Habits with Elizabeth Rhino. And then on August the 31st, we have Overcoming Sexual Pain with Mary Grimberg. Great shows.
Yes, definitely. So if you've been listening and you truly like what we've been saying or like the podcast, please like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Follow us. And definitely check out our guest. He has a podcast also, and it's called A Little Less Fear. Definitely check that out or go onto his website. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. You can also find us at bringingintimacyback.com, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Dr. April Brown's 7-book series, Improving Intimacy, is now on Amazon. We'll see you next Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe.